The Eagles are 3-8 in their last 11 games, and during that span have given up the most points in the National Football League. Sal Powell has the birds at the bye and why the run game is back. Sean Green and Bill Reinhard have your picks, props, and fantasy sleepers for Week 5. And today is a notable anniversary for the Eagles great Eric Allen. That's all next on a Week 5 edition of This Week in Pro Football.
It's time for This Week in Pro Football, a deep dive into the key issues and marquee matchups in the National Football League. For the next 60 minutes, we invite you to sit back or lean in with host Pat Callahan as we preview the week's Eagles matchup, big games, breaking stories, and all news NFL. It's This Week in Pro Football, right now on JAKIB Media Sports.
All right, welcome everybody to JAKIB Sports and This Week in Pro Football. Pat Callahan joining you for week number 5 in the National Football League. You can give me a follow on X at TWIPFPat. You can follow the network at JAKIB Sports. As we talk about week 5 in what is a very, very interesting first month of the season here, a lot of ups, a lot of downs, a lot of surprises. And we'll touch on as much of it as we can in the next, 80 minutes or so here on This Week in Pro Football. Sal Powell, of course, is going to join me in about 5 minutes. I have a ton of things, obviously, to talk about with Sal, including why the run game is back and some other notable statistics about the passing game in the NFL. Sean Green will join me. We'll talk some picks and props, the bottom of this hour, and then Bill Reinhard has some the latest fantasy information for you. And then Eagles great Eric Allen will join us at the top of the next hour to talk about cornerback play, specifically as it relates to the Eagles and around the NFL. All right, it's an action-packed show. I hope you stay with me for the entire program. Let's get started here. The good, the bad, and the ugly from week 4 in the NFL. We'll also at the quarter poll, so we'll take a look at both. Xander, if you want to bring those standings up, we'll look at the standings through week number 4. How about those Washington Commanders, ladies and gentlemen? How many of you had them at 3-1 after the first month? Jaden Daniels is the star in the NFL, just eerily reminiscent of Robert Griffin's rookie year in Washington also. Hopefully he'll have a better finish. Commanders look pretty good right now, though. Schedule gets a little tougher. We'll see how they do. Dallas and Philadelphia, 2-2. A lot of questions about both of those teams at the quarter poll. Tampa leads the NFC South after they dismantled Philadelphia again. Minnesota, the surprise team in the NFC at 4-0, go into Green Bay and hold off a furious Packer rally for a 31-29 win. Minnesota could be the real deal. We're not totally sold yet on Sam Darnold. Seattle leads the NFC West after a ridiculous shootout against Detroit. In the AFC, Buffalo sits at 3-1, but they got exposed a little bit. You should have seen that coming. They're not going to go undefeated, and they crashed to earth against the raging Baltimore Ravens, who sit at 2-2, still a game behind Pittsburgh. I don't see that position lasting long. In the South, the AFC South, really, somebody's going to win it. It's going to be Houston. And the Chiefs, 4-0. Very unfortunate injury to Rashee Rice, self-administered really by Patrick Mahomes. Just an absolute freakish play. But the Chiefs just go on. They just go on and win games. They know how to do it. 2-time Super Bowl champions. So the Chiefs and the Vikings, I guess, are the good. The bad, well, look at these standings right here. You look at it. Miami sitting at 1-3. Las Vegas, the Raiders 2-2. New England sitting at 1-3. You know what? They have terrible quarterback play. They did not invest in the backup quarterback position at all. Indy at 2-2, won last week solely because Joe Flacco was their backup. And Flacco came in and won that game in the place of the oft-injured Anthony Richardson. So you got to have the backup. Look at Carolina. Carolina only sitting at 1-3, but Andy Dalton's insertion into that lineup has rejuvenated that team's offense. I want to talk to Eric Allen about that at the end of our show tonight. The ugly? Well, how about a little fly, Eagles fly? That was about as bad a first quarter as you could have last week. We'll talk to Sal about that. 24-0 or in the first quarter. I mean, just an absolutely horrendous quarter of football by the Eagles there. They rallied a little bit, but you can't come back from that kind of a deficit against a pretty good team at Tampa Bay. And then the Cowboys. The Cowboys I'm putting them in the ugly because they're 2-2 in the first 4 weeks. They don't seem to have any identity. Certainly cannot run the ball at all. Zeke Elliott appears to be benched right now. They can't run, and now they're having trouble stopping the run, especially with DeMarcus Lawrence out and Micah Parsons now with a Liz Frank injury. The Cowboys are limping into that game Sunday against the Pittsburgh Steelers. All right, Z, let's take a quick look at that Week 5 schedule. It's a good one, actually. It's a good schedule for Week 5. There's some pretty good games here. 4 teams on the bye, including Philadelphia. Detroit also, the LA Chargers. But Thursday Night Football, big NFC South game, Tampa Bay at Atlanta. It's a statement game for the Falcons. It really is. Tampa Bay can take a good hold of that division with a win in that game. Sunday, we start the international nonsense where the NFL continues to try and print money. Jets travel to Minnesota. It's a Vikings home game. I'm sure Viking fans are thrilled with that. But anyway, the Jets, a terrible loss last week, an absolutely atrocious loss to Denver. So the Jets have some they've got some splaining to do Sunday morning against the 4-0 Vikings. I mentioned the Ravens off a demolition of Buffalo at Cincinnati. It's a big game for the Bengals, who won their first game. This is an absolute must game for Cincinnati if they're going to stay in that division race. I mentioned Buffalo. That's going to be an interesting game, Buffalo-Houston. Buffalo crashed after a 3-0 start. We'll see if they rebound. You never bet against Josh Allen. There's no way he's going to go 2 games in a row without a touchdown. I just don't see that happening. New York, the Giants at Seattle, I think could be an interesting game. The Giants are trying to stay relevant. We'll see with Daniel Jones. Seattle, see how they react after their first loss of the season. And then the Sunday night game, Dallas at Pittsburgh. I mentioned the Cowboys are limping into this game. I don't believe in Justin Fields and that Steeler offense. We'll see. But it'll be interesting to see how the Cowboys do in that national spotlight on Sunday night. All right, Z, thank you very much for that. Never want to delay too much to bring this gentleman on. That's the ESPN national correspondent, the author of How Football Explains America, and, of course, the host of the ESPN's NFL Matchup Show, and that would be Sal Paolantonio. Hello, Sal.
Good evening, Pat Callahan, and everybody watching This Week in Pro Football on JAKIB Media. Great to join you once again, going into Week 5, Pat. Going into Week 5.
I know, a month already in the book, Sal, and there's a million things to talk about, but just if you'll let me cast a look back to last week, you have been stating all season and going back to last season about how long it's taking Jalen Hurts to get rid of the ball. And we saw it again last week, Sal, whereas Baker Mayfield, he was barely getting the ball from the center and it was leaving his hands. Just talk about for a minute, why such a difference between the two quarterbacks last week in Tampa Bay?
Well, the contrast was overwhelming last week for a number of reasons. First of all, the Eagles' defense was playing off the ball, and so Baker Mayfield could stick his right foot in the ground and hit his first read, and he was throwing the ball, getting rid of it, time to throw in under 2 seconds, Pat, under 2 seconds, which is unheard of in the National Football League. That's Tom Brady-like.
Right.
And so there was a great contrast with Jalen Hurts. He came into the game holding the ball, time to throw, 3.2 seconds, which is an eternity in the National Football League. It was the slowest time in the NFL and the slowest time of his career. Now he's at 3.1 seconds, time to throw, snap to release, which is the slowest in his career and second slowest in the National Football League. And in my opinion, it's a cause and effect relationship with the negative plays from the quarterback position. Over the last 2 years, negative plays are defined by sacks, fumbles, interceptions. Since the start of last season, the guy with the most sacks, fumbles, and interceptions is Bryce Young. He was benched. He was a rookie. He was benched.
Right.
No longer in the starting lineup.
Right.
Number 2, Sam Howell. I'm not sure where Sam Howell is. That's and I'm not trying to say that, pejoratively.
I know what you mean.
Man, but I mean, I don't know where he is. I honestly don't. I know he's been popping around. He was with Washington for a while. So he's number 2. Number 3 on that list is Jalen Hurts. Number 3 on the list of negative plays
Yeah.
So it's inexcusable. The head coach said as much. It is definitely not sustainable. How do you fix it? Well, it's read and reaction time has got to be sped up. And he was doing that in training camp. Now, in training camp, they're not coming to take your head off. There's a different situation. They don't
Right.
have the pass rush to deal
Right.
with.
Right.
Really not comparable. So they've got to do something in practice to speed up his read and recognition, whether it's after 2 seconds, they stop the play. Stop it.
Right. Right.
Okay. Stop. That play is over. We will do it again until you get the ball out in 2 seconds or less.
All right.
Or 2.5 seconds. That's something that they have to work on. If the play goes over 2.5 seconds, you stop the play. It's a negative play. We're doing it again.
All right.
That's one way you can do it. I've seen that done at the NFL level and collegiate level, Pat.
All right. All right. When we get back from this quick break here, I'm going to ask Sal about to what extent the Eagles not having their top 2 receivers was a factor last week and what the status is of the 2 guys heading into the bye. We're also going to talk with Sal about Nick Sirianni. I just got some questions about his press conference. And then we're going to talk about the resurgence of the run game and the backsliding of the pass game in the National Football League. That's all next on a Week 5 edition of This Week in Pro Football.
It was late at night. I was browsing KennedyAuto.com when there was a knock at my door.
Hey, baby, what you doing?
Buying a car from John Kennedy Ford.
Online?
I let her in on the secret. KennedyAuto.com makes car buying easy. That got her attention.
Can I go for a ride?
Let me get my coat. KennedyAuto.com. Enjoy your ride.
Discover the essence of true community banking with First Bank, your trusted partner across eastern Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Their network of branches brings you convenient access to dedicated personal bankers who understand your unique needs. At First Bank, you're not just a customer, you're a valued member of the community. Additionally, they are excited to announce the opening of 2 new branches in Media, Pennsylvania and Trenton, New Jersey, bringing their personalized banking services even closer to you. Connect with any member of the team today at their Westchester office, conveniently located at 849 Paoli Pike, or call them at 484-881-3800. First Bank is an equal opportunity lender and member FDIC.
Hi, I'm Jim Muehlbronner, Managing Partner at Delval Insurance Group. Give us a call. We're a local, knowledgeable agency, not an 800 number. Go Birds!
All right, back here this week in Pro Football with the great Sal Paolantonio, the author of How Football Explains America. I strongly urge you to go pick that book up. It's been reissued, right, Sal? It's out again, and it's a great read. Great little read. Also, the host of the NFL Matchup Show, which I know you'll be cranking out again this weekend. Look forward to that. Anything particular on that agenda, Sal?
Oh, we're going to take a deep dive into the Kansas City Chiefs on Monday night. You'll see.
All right. All right. I mean, that is a fact. It is a great story. I mean, that is a team. Just Reed and Mahomes. They just don't lose games. Not 1 second in that game last Sunday did I think the Chiefs were going to lose to the Chargers. I don't care if it was 10-0. That didn't matter at all. That there is something incredibly unique about the Chiefs right now, Sal. So I look forward to that. All right. One last look back at that game, Sal. 33-16. You give up 33 points, but I'm still talking offense here. Your tight end is your leading receiver, 7 for 62. That's not going to work when you give up 33 points. Jahan Dotson, as you pointed out, the Eagles made the trade for him, and he has been utterly, completely ineffectual. Will the Eagles' passing game pick up noticeably once A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith return?
Yeah, and the question is, when will they return? So a hamstring can be very problematic, and so can a concussion.
Right.
But, there was really no excuse last week at the beginning of the game. You're down by 7. You can't get anything cranked on offense. Then you're down by 14. It's super hot, 108 degrees, real feel in the stadium, Raymond James Stadium. Your defense is already beginning to feel the heat. You got to give them time on the bench. I don't care if they're loading up the box or not.
Right.
You got to run the ball, and they didn't do that. They didn't give Saquon Barkley enough chances with the football. And that's what they have to do in the meantime until they get this passing game done, figured out.
Right. Right. So, I mean, I think you're absolutely. They've got to. Well, we're going to talk in a few minutes about how the run game is resurgent. Barkley's been terrific, and the Eagles are going to have to rely on that. I think you're certainly right until the passing game gets figured out. Let's look at the other side of the ball, Sal. The Eagles in this span that you and I have been talking about, in which they're now 3-8, have given up 278 points, the most in the NFL. That's 30 points a game. Give me your thoughts on the dynamic right now between Nick Sirianni and Vic Fangio. Is this working? And do you expect to see improvement as Fangio's system gets more familiar to the players?
The system is not much different than the system that they've had. The system that they had under Gannon, under Sean Desai, under Matt Patricia to a lesser degree. The system that they've had is they're going to play off the ball, and they're going to let their 4-man rush get to the quarterback. It's not working. You have the original shutdown corner, Eric Allen, on the show later. He'll tell you. He'll give you firsthand witness testimony.
Right.
You got to play press man coverage. And if you put that blitz, that 46 defense in there, and you blitz like Buddy Ryan did, now you got something.
Right.
But if you don't have either one of those things, you're not going to stop any of it. Pat, 30 points a game in the last 11 games is just an insane number of points. You can't – I don't care how good Jalen Hurts is. You can't overcome it. You certainly can't overcome it when you're turning over the ball as much as he is.
No.
So about the dynamic between Sirianni and Fangio, I don't think there's any dynamic. I think Fangio coaches the defense, Kellen Moore coaches the offense, and Nick Sirianni is sort of an overseer CEO. I'm not sure exactly what his role is in the X's and O's of the football team.
Yeah.
And it begs the question, if he doesn't have the accountability and responsibility, then firing him is really a foolish move.
Yeah. It's not really going to accomplish anything. Right.
How can you blame somebody if he doesn't have responsibility for it?
Yeah. I really wonder, Sal, and you may not have, I guess, an opinion here, whether Sirianni was fully committed to bringing Fangio in for that very reason. Fangio just doesn't strike me as a guy who's going to listen to much input from a head coach. He seems like a real old school guy. And Sal, you were kind enough to send me the transcript of the press conference. And I mean, how Andy Reedish does this sound when he was asked about what kind of in-game changes are you making when you see Tampa Bay get off to such a fast start? And you hear, well, you have to make the adjustments that give you a chance to put the guys in position to succeed. That type of cringeworthy answer, Sal. And I bring it up only because is he just covering and just issuing the same banalities that Reed did, or is he that removed from the X's and O's that he doesn't really have an answer?
Pick one. Neither one of them is good. Neither one of those answers is good answer.
Right.
So,
I
gave the two things that I hear around the league are, one, the Eagles really aren't in that bad of a shape if they do a couple of things. One is if they have more game plan specific defense that's specific to the opponent, like a Belichick would run. Belichick was very opponent specific in how he ran a defense. He did not have a scheme. Right. He had an idea of how he was going to stop that team. What were you doing to stop that team? Right. And two, they've got to really find a way to cut down on Jalen Hurts' turnovers, because they had chances to get back in the game against the Bucs.
Right.
And that's why Hurts talked about playing better after the game in Tampa. because he knew he squandered some of those chances by turning the ball over.
Exactly. A critical strip sack after the Eagles had kind of climbed back into the game. That was the end of the game when he fumbled that ball.
Now you could look at the bright side if you want to. And the bright side must include getting Brown, Smith, and Johnson back.
Yeah.
That's the first part of it.
Right.
Then you look at, all right, they're 2-2 in a division that's up for grabs, in a conference that doesn't really have a dominant team yet.
Right.
Next up are Cleveland, at New York, Cincinnati, and Jacksonville.
Yep.
You gotta go 4-0, Pat, and you got to be 6-2 after those 4 games.
Yeah. Those 4 teams are 3-13 at this point. You have got to sweep those games. At the worst, Sal, 3-1. I mean, Cincinnati might be more formidable, but you got to win the other 3 games.
Yes, and Next Gen Stats, Pat, says they have the 4th easiest schedule remaining in 2024. The Philadelphia Eagles.
Right.
So 3-1 would be good, but you really got to focus and say, all right, we have a chance to go 4-0 in our next 4 games and be 6-2 and take control of the division. Right. Let's go do that. Right. It's all predicated, however, big fat, however, comma, Brown, Smith, and Johnson coming back healthy.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, you were the first to sound the alarm bell on the Jahan Dotson trade, which really, I mean, it was, as you pointed out, he has a whopping 25 yards receiving so far this year. Probably less than the Eagles expected, especially with their top 2 guys out last week. That hasn't worked at all. The Eagles got to get that pass.
He's not open, Pat. I trained my binoculars. When he put him out there, he's never open. And that's another reason why Jalen was holding the ball. But, Jalen was also looking for long shots. There were a couple of chances where Levante David was just screaming down his throat right through the A gap. He's got to read and react to that, and he's got to have a hot route for that, and it just didn't exist.
Well, you did mention too, Sal, that who's really scary in the conference. So I mean, the Eagles at 2-2 are still in okay shape here. As you mentioned, they got to make hay the next month. But there's really, do you see anybody in the NFC? I mean, I don't know how much Kool-Aid, the Viking Kool-Aid you're drinking, but I don't really see anybody in the NFC that's anywhere near indestructible.
The Vikings have always been a fluky team. They have always been streaky. But in the end, they don't come up big. Even when Randall Cunningham was the quarterback or Brant Parkinson was quarterback, go back to the day. I mean, Pat, it's always been the case with the Vikings. They've never won the Super Bowl.
Right.
I'll say this. Offensively, they're very, very good. Sam Darnold is very accurate and has a strong arm, and he has the best receiver in the National Football League, and they have a good running game. They're the only team in the top 5 in points scored and points allowed after 4 weeks.
Yeah.
On defense, they have the 3rd oldest defense in the league that has already played the 5th most snaps on the field. Watch the defense.
Okay.
Even though Brian Flores has a very good scheme, multiple scheme, and he mixes and matches, brings guys on and off the field.
Yeah.
Last week, at the end of the game, they gave up a lot of points to Jordan Love.
There you go. But now, and your point really is wait till November. Watch the Vikings in November, December, and see if that team is gassed. And that's really the risk. It's a long, long season.
Yes, it is.
You've been mentioning forever too, Sal. And let's talk about this. How tight the competition has been. More games have been decided by 8.7 and 6 points than in any other. So, I mean, it's not.
We're going back to 1920, Pat.
Yeah, it's not a big difference between winning and losing right now.
It's a one-score league.
Right.
One-score league.
Yeah.
And scoring's at a 14-year low, and passing the ball is at the lowest point this century. And as a result, running the football is at a 36-year high. This is the NFL your father loved, Pat. This is the one right here.
Right.
This is it.
Let's talk about the why of it, though, Sal.
My old man and your old man. This is the NFL we fell in love with.
I know. My theory on it, Sal, because all the rules, let's face it, they're skewed towards the passing game. But, I mean, I think you have a lot of quarterbacks in this league right now that aren't really that good. I mean, I can point you to a number of teams that have really, really shaky quarterback positions, right? If we went through both conferences, you could see the Colts, you could see the obviously the Panthers with Bryce Young. That was a disaster. Don't tell me Pittsburgh's 3-1 because of Justin Fields. Look at Vegas. There's so many teams that, in my opinion, came into the season with no chance of going deep because their quarterback play is insufficient. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Pat, I mean, the NFL did a deep dive last summer, going into the 2023 season, on why scoring is down and passing is down. And, they're not giving away all of their research, but it's pretty obvious. Number one, you had 72 starting quarterbacks 2 years ago, 68 last year. Injuries, that leads to inexperience at quarterbacks who are coming in, second and third string quarterbacks.
Right.
You had 16 different offensive coordinators this year. That's half the league. So you have upheaval in the offensive systems. Jalen Hurts alone, since he's become a starter, has had 5 different guys calling the plays in his helmet. 5. So there's a lot of upheaval. The dynamics are not steady. There's a lot of injuries. And you heard Mike Greenberg and others, Mel Kiper, talking about the fact that a lot of teams are playing too high safety. And so the ball has to be thrown underneath.
Right.
And so you have yardage down as a result.
Yeah.
Every quarterback who's ever played the position has looked at it and said, okay, they're playing too high safety. I'm handing the ball to my running back.
Yeah.
That's
Look at
it.
Detroit. That Monday night, Detroit put 42 points on the board and threw the ball 19 times. So, I mean, that's a perfect example of what it is you're talking about. Teams are averaging 120 yards a game running the ball, which I think you had told me was a 24-year high. So it's funny to see the running game back because it's been so disparaged over the last half dozen years. Do you think it lasts through the season, Sal?
I do. I think it will. You just have a lot of inexperience at the quarterback position, a lot of upheaval in offensive systems. I do, Pat. I think it's here to stay until, you also have a lot of rookie quarterbacks being shoved into the starting lineup.
I agree wholeheartedly on that point.
This is a long-term trend. And when I mean long-term, I'm talking 5 to 10 year trend.
Yeah. All right. Which underscores really, Sal, that the Eagles, Howie did make a shrewd move bringing in Barkley. He might be the key to the Eagles making any type of deep run this year.
Absolutely. Yes. And they got to use him, though, Pat.
That helps.
And you know what? You got to use him. You're down 14 in the first quarter. You're not down 14 in the fourth quarter.
Right.
First quarter, stay with the run. I don't care how much Levante David is loading up the box. Right. Block him. Yeah. And by the way, employ a fullback.
Yes.
Look at San Francisco. Look at the Chargers. They're using a former defensive tackle from Idaho as a fullback.
The Ravens, as you pointed out.
Yeah, Patrick Ricard. They're using a fullback, even though they have one of the biggest backs in the NFL and Derrick Henry.
I know.
So you have to go with what's available to you right now.
I know.
But what do I know, Pat? I'm just on this show with you. I'm not running an NFL team.
All right. Well, look, I'm looking forward to the matchup show this weekend. I want to see that about the Chiefs because I think it's a fascinating. It is. It's a fascinating story. They are completely. They're the only 4-0 team that's so far under the radar. But we'll see. Be interesting to talk about that, Sal, next week. And I appreciate you spending all this time with me. And look forward to talking to you again next week. All right.
All right, Pac. Always great to be on This Week in Pro Football.
All right, Sal. Thanks very much. The great Sal Paolantonio joining me again for an extended stay here on This Week in Pro Football. And when I get back, how about we talk to the one and only Sean Green, and we'll talk some picks and some props and Sean's thoughts on the passing game in the National Football League. We'll do that next on This Week in Pro Football.
Welcome to Park Bank, a return to better banking. With 7 locations across Philadelphia and South Jersey, we prioritize your financial well-being with a blend of modern amenities and traditional customer service. Our professional team is dedicated to providing tailored banking solutions, whether you are opening your first account, planning for retirement, or expanding your business. Our services include a wide range of personal and business banking options with competitive deposit rates and products, products, we are committed to making your banking experience seamless and efficient with the latest technology at your fingertips and the personalized support you deserve. Park Bank, your bank, your community. For more information, go to parkbank.com. That's Park, P-A-R-K-E, bank.com. Member FDIC. Concrete Cutting Systems Incorporated is the concrete cutting specialist in the Philadelphia area since 1995, and they've become the specialist in the Pittsburgh area as well. These guys are celebrating 28 years as the industry leader in the field of concrete cutting and robotic demolition. So if you have a project that requires any type of concrete cutting or drilling, concrete demolition, or interior excavating, call the specialist, Concrete Cutting Systems, located at 2514 Orthodox Street in the heart of Philly. Call them at 215-533-0652. With a fleet of over 70 service trucks, Concrete Cutting Systems Incorporated is always ready to service all of your concrete cutting, drilling, and concrete demolition and highway sealing needs. These guys are the only full union concrete cutting company based in Philadelphia. So don't delay. Call the boys today at 215-533-0652. And be sure to check them out on Facebook and Instagram at CCSINC_Phila or on the web at concretecuttingsystems.net.
Welcome back this week in pro football, week 5 of the National Football League here on JAKIB Sports. All right, Xander, let's bring this gentleman on here from the Sports Gambling Podcast, usually housed in Vegas, and that would be the excellent Sean Green. Sean, how you doing, pal?
Doing good. Yeah, coming off a pretty solid week 4 and looking forward to NFL week 5.
All right, sure you are. Enjoyed your conversation with Mike Oxmall earlier today.
I thought I'd heard them all, but apparently,
look, that's not a bad one. I got to tell you, that's not a bad one at all. You're gonna really have to be on your game going forward because now you're gonna get a raft up.
Right, now everyone's trying to get me.
It's true. That's true. All right, look, I want to start with this one, Sean, and I didn't really warn you I was going to do this, but Bill Parcells' one of his famous sayings was, "It's not the X's and the O's, it's the Jimmies and the Joes," right? But I look at, say, last week, Buffalo 3-0, playing excellent football, goes into Baltimore, and I just said to myself, they're going to crash. And I, of course, I didn't put any money on it, but I did think that because Buffalo's not going 17-0, and they're going to have a dip, and lo and behold, in they go to the Ravens, who just destroyed them. When you're making picks, how much do you consider that type of psychology, or are you just looking at the Jimmies and the Joes?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think the issue is the Jimmies and the Joes, especially post free agency, with the salary cap, it's pretty close. So, I mean, it sounds like a cliche, but the guys on the other side are also professionals. So if you can find these situation spots, which I usually like to factor into my handicapping, and, Bills on a short week after they've been cruising through easier competition, they don't do great stopping the run. It was the perfect match, a perfect situation. In hindsight, I did kind of like the Bills going in there. But yeah, I mean, I do think situational handicapping matters a ton, and you see it. Good quarterbacks coming off a loss, you're usually going to get a pretty good value against the number. Okay. So there's some stuff like that, certainly. So yeah, I factor in the situation stuff a decent amount.
All right. Is there any game on the slate this week in which you would look that struck you as one of those situations, if you will? I don't see many where a good quarterback's coming off a loss because there ain't a lot of good quarterbacks, for one thing. But do you see any particular game in which you thought, there's a trend here?
Yeah, well, so there's two. I mean, I would say the Bills Texans. I mean, when you have a 25-point loss and you're the Buffalo Bills,
Right.
there's a ton of trends of teams losing by that margin, and then either they're a dog, small favorite, having a lot of value. So I do think the Bills do bounce back against the Texans. I think this is, I think Josh Allen's going to get up for this game. I think they match up pretty well against the Texans team. CJ Stroud's a little bit of a sophomore slump here. And yeah, I think this is a good matchup actually for the Bills, and like them coming off a loss, I think you're going to get the best effort from that Bills team.
Yeah, I buy off on that. The 3 games I did ask you about, let's talk about them, Sean, with the Eagles being on a bye. By the way, the Eagles get smoked last week in Tampa. What kind of alarm bells are you sending relative to the Eagles? Or do you think with the week off and the return of the receivers, they're going to be all right?
Yeah, I mean, you want to look at trends. Just look at the Eagles' record with and without Lane Johnson. They just don't win games without Lane Johnson. So him being back, I think, is the biggest thing. And then Hurts with A.J. Brown is kind of a different story than without. So I would love to see how this team is going to do with a healthy A.J. Brown, healthy healthy Devonta Smith, and healthy Lane Johnson coming out of the bye against a Cleveland Browns team that's going to be on their 3rd road game in a row. So if they can't get it done against Cleveland at home next week, then I'll really be worried. Then the alarms will be officially ringing pretty loud.
They lose to Deshaun Watson. Who knows? He may actually top 200 yards passing. You never know, Sean.
Yeah, look out.
That's right. All right, 3 games I wanted to talk to you about. The international game, like I give a damn about the NFL playing in London, but let's schlep over to London and play a game between a team from Minnesota and a team from New York. Jets looked absolutely horrendous. Now, is this another situation you were just talking about where the Jets just really embarrassed themselves, in my opinion, against Denver, managing to lose that game? They go against a 4-0 Minnesota team. How long is that going to last, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? So, one, going back to the Broncos, they were my lock, one of my locks last week, because you want to talk about situation spots, teams looking ahead to London that are big favorites. It's a pretty strong trend that they kind of look past it, and that Broncos defense is underrated. But kind of coming back to this game in particular, I think the Minnesota defense is actually pretty underrated, and they do a lot of the same stuff that this Denver Broncos team did, and that caused the Jets to struggle. Now, I think both things can be true. I'm not betting Sam Darnold to win the MVP. I'm a little skeptical of that. I think this projects to be a very ugly game, but I would take Minnesota laying 2.5. Favorites have done incredibly well overseas, and you just look at an organizational standpoint, right? A lot of times these international games, it sounds silly, but the organization that has their stuff together a little bit more, a lot of times comes out on top. And this Jets team, from starting with not being able to get Hassan Reddick out on the field, whatever weird sort of dynamic that's going on between Aaron Rodgers and Robert Saleh, and Aaron Rodgers' knee, I know his knee's okay, but he took a ton of shots. Now you got an 8-hour flight to London.
Yeah.
I think there's just a lot of reasons not to get on the Jets. Now, if you're talking yourself into the Jets, you're getting quote unquote good value in the market.
Right.
And the public seems to be backing the Vikings. So that's your case for the Jets, but I would still go Vikings.
I think there's some serious questions about the Jets, Sean. I really do.
Yeah,
I'm not for one thing, Sean. I don't think there's much in the way of a mutual affection at all between the quarterback and the head coach. And eventually that gets in the way, in my opinion. I just don't think they like each other. The other thing I want to ask you about the Jets, their name being mentioned frequently now in the Devonta Adams sweepstakes. Is there a betting line right now as to where Adams ends up, and where do the Jets fit in that?
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm sure someone is hanging. And it does look like the Jets, I'm pulling it up right now. It does look like the Jets are the favorite for the betting line. They're about even money. Saints are in there at 275, Steelers 450. I'm surprised the Commanders at 8-1 aren't a little bit of a bigger favorite, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess if you're the Jets and you can get Davante Adams and you're all in, why not?
I don't
But
know.
I don't think that's really what this team is missing, honestly. I think it's just some out of sync offense.
Yeah, I agree, Sean. I think if you got Garrett Wilson, you should have plenty of firepower at the wide receiver position. I think bringing Adams in, there's only one football, and you got Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, now Davante Adams. I think a big mistake by the Jets if they do it, but we'll see how that plays out. The other of the two games I want to talk to you about, Baltimore is at Cincinnati. I mentioned the Ravens. Now, there's a psychology there, Sean, that says the Ravens at home demolish Buffalo. Huge breakout game for their offense. Now they have to go to Cincinnati and play on a Sunday afternoon. Any thoughts about maybe a letdown for the Ravens here?
Yeah, 100%. I like the Bengals and the points. You can get 2.5, maybe the 3. If you can find the 3, I definitely like that because obviously you get the key number of 3 there. But either way, I think Bengals win it outright. I'm taking them on the money line. I mean, let's just start with AFC North dogs. They're hitting at 61% since 2018. So just start right there. Yeah. And you look at the matchup here. The Bengals are a very interesting team. Their defense can look horrible, but then they can really come up in big spots, right? Like, look at how well that defense played against Kansas City. When this defense matches up well against a defense it knows, they really show up, right? And Lamar Jackson, as much as, he's the NFL MVP, and, what an interesting stat is against Lamar is that he's only lost, I think, once to an NFC team. And that was a team that kind of had the inside information on. And while that's a good stat for Lamar Jackson, I think it also exposes his weakness of that. If you know how to play Lamar Jackson, you know how to prepare for him. And Derrick Henry looked great, but it's also back-to-back games where he's had now in these past 2 games, 50+ touches. I don't know how much gas he's going to have in the tank.
I don't know. Seemed to have plenty on that 87-yard run. He actually outran those guys. He actually,
right away, you're like, oh man, all right. Well, there goes.
I'm wondering how hard those Buffalo players were trying to catch him. I don't know. They might have been making the decision there.
Yeah. But the matchup I really like is the Bengals receivers against this Ravens secondary. Who have the Ravens struggled with, right? They struggled with CeeDee Lamb, and then they struggled with Davante Adams. I mean, that's the only reason the Raiders came back is because they couldn't guard Davante Adams. So I think they're going to have their hands full.
All right. The last one I want to ask you about, Dallas, is at Pittsburgh. The Cowboys, in my opinion, are limping in here, Sean. Yes, they beat the Giants. Big deal. They beat the Giants for the nth time in a row, but they come in now with no DeMarcus Lawrence, no Micah Parsons, and no running game at all. Your thoughts on Cowboys at Steelers?
Yeah, I love the Steelers here. Steelers one of the last places that has a real home field advantage. You mentioned it. The injuries for the Cowboys on defense, and I know the Giants didn't score an offensive touchdown, but man, that Dallas defense didn't slow them down a bit. And now you have a Steelers offense that's kind of finding themselves a little bit. I think they're going to be able to run the ball. And then on the other side, that rookie right tackle the Cowboys have, he's been a turnstile. You got TJ Watt on the other side. And I don't think the Cowboys are going to be able to run the ball against the Steelers. And if you can't run the ball against the Steelers, you're really going to be in trouble. And I think especially on that home turf, Steelers defense even plays a little bit better. I really love Steelers in this spot.
All right. That is one of Sean's locks of the week is the Steelers there. I don't trust the Cowboys on the road either. I just don't. I think the Cowboys and the Eagles. I like the Eagles' chances better to get their act together over the next month. But I don't know. The Cowboys just don't seem to have a vibe to me, Sean. At least not right now. So
no, and it's they have CeeDee Lamb, but other than that, what are they doing offensively?
I know. I agree with you. What are they doing? So. All right, listen, Sean Green, where does everybody find you over the weekend besides taking crank emails? Where else do people find you so they can get some last-minute info?
Yeah, sportsgamblingpodcast.com. And then, follow us on Twitter, X, at Gambling Podcast. Do a pregame show on our YouTube channel. Just type in Sports Gambling Podcast on whatever you watch or listen to. We'll be there giving you out free picks.
All right. That's excellent. It's a great website. Everybody check it out. Thank you very much, Sean. We'll talk to you next week. All right, pal.
Later.
Sean Green, presented by the great folks at Concrete Cutting Systems. When we come back, On This Week in Pro Football, presented by Park Bank, we're going to bring Bill Reinhard on, do a little post-mortem on his beloved Buffalo Bills and that performance Sunday night against the Ravens. And we'll talk some Week 5 sleepers and picks in fantasy football. That's next on This Week in Pro Football.
What on earth are you doing? We have dinner reservations in 15 minutes.
I'm trying to figure out who to start in my fantasy football lineup. Every website I check has a different opinion. It's driving me crazy. How do you set your lineup so fast?
I have a secret weapon that will blow your mind.
Wow. What's the secret?
I've been using fantasyguru.com for all of my fantasy football decisions.
Fantasyguru.com? Isn't that with that crazy guy, Jeff Manns?
You mean the legendary fantasy guru, Jeff Manns? He's a genius. Fantasyguru.com has everything you need to dominate your league. Starts, sits, busts. It's like having a fantasy football expert panel in your corner.
Wow. Fantasyguru.com. But I feel like you're cheating on me.
How do you think I won our league last year? Fantasyguru.com. It'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Join fantasyguru.com today. Use the code NEW30 for 30% off instant savings.
Evolution Energy Partners has helped hundreds of businesses save millions of dollars on their energy spent. They offer electricity and gas procurement strategies, efficiency audits and engineering and financing solutions, as well as online utility bill management. To learn how your business can save, visit www.evolutionep.com or contact Chuck Herschella at 610-329-8288. Evolution Energy Partners Energy Solutions to improve your bottom line.
At Whistler Pearlstein LLP, we assemble the most effective team to handle all of your legal needs. There are players and pretenders, but our hustle and heart set us apart. In practice now for over 75 years, we're proud to be one of the most prominent full-service law firms in the Philadelphia region. We offer 17 different areas of practice, including business, corporate, and tax education law, real estate, zoning, and land development, municipal law, and litigation. Our top-rated attorneys and staff are laser-focused on client success. We strive to provide outstanding legal counsel with the highest level of care and consideration. Let us show you the Whistler way. Learn more at WhistlerPearlstein.com or email Michael J. O'Donohue at mod@whistpearl.com. WhistlerPearlstein.com or mod@whistpearl.com.
Welcome back. This Week in Pro Football presented by Park Bank. Pat Callahan here with you. Give me a follow at TWIPF Pat on X. You can follow the network at JAKIB Sports. You can follow this guy too at NFL Fantasy Bill, and that is Bill Reinhard from fantasyguru.com and the contributor to the New York Daily News. How you doing, Bill?
I'm well. How about you?
All right, Bill. Okay. Just wondering, any more commercial opportunities after based on that ad that you did there, Bill? I guess the offers are flocking in, huh?
They're just, they only want my wife to do the commercials. They don't want me. So that's all right. Live and learn. But I just hope you don't get tired of that commercial because that's
Bill.
The only one we have.
That's it. I hope you shoot another one. I'm looking forward to the next one. All right, Bill Reinhard. Let's talk here some fantasy for week number 5. I want to hit you with some names here that I think there's just so much speculation going on right now about a number of guys, be it injury or trade. And let's start with these 3 names here. Are you buying or selling or just holding on Christian McCaffrey, where the injury speculation is this could go on for a while? Well, let's start with him. How about CMC? What are you doing with him?
I have to just say, if you have him, sell him. I don't like the guys tendonitis in both of his Achilles tendons, and he flew to Germany to try and see a specialist there, and he came back, and they said he was doing a little thing on the side, and then after all of this, they said he's still not. If he comes back, it won't be till November. So, and And what's he going to do in November? I don't know. So I feel for the guy, but I don't hold on to him. Hopefully you were smart enough to take Mason, his backup, and you have him on your lineup.
Agreed. Speaking of injury, Nick Chubb activated or the practice window open for Chubb. And this was a surprise to me, Bill. I mean, I had him last year, and I thought I'd made an excellent pick. He was going to be great all year, and he suffers a gruesome knee injury. What are your thoughts on either acquiring or even trading Chubb?
So I stay away from him. I actually have Ford, the starter for Cleveland now, who I think they're underutilizing. But, with Cleveland, the line is bad. Watson's playing poorly. What are you going to do with Chubb? I mean, it takes more than a year for anyone to recover from that surgery. So he can lift 500 pounds. He can run on the sideline, but I'm not a big fan of keeping him on a fantasy team right now.
The upside of Chubb, Bill, is that it gets the ball out of Deshaun Watson's hands. So, I mean, the Browns might be looking to utilize him because they're $230 million man. I tell you, that could be the worst contract in NFL history by the time that's over. The other name I wanted you to opine on, Bill, in terms of speculation is Davante Adams. Now he made up a hamstring injury to put the pressure on the Raiders. The teams I'm hearing about acquiring him, Bill, surprised me. Why the Jets would want to get Davante Adams, I don't understand it. Why the Saints, who have Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, and to me a subpar quarterback in Derek Carr, would want the aggravation of Davante Adams. What are your thoughts on Adams as both a buyer or a seller?
Well, I don't want any part of him, quite honestly, but I mean, how much more are the Jets going to kowtow to Aaron Rodgers? I mean, give me a break. They got him Mike Williams. They got him Allen Lazard. He's got Garrett Wilson. He's got Conklin. He's got Breece Hall. He's got Braden. I mean, they revamped the entire offensive line, and it's still not enough. Get me my guy. Get me Davante Adams, who's 32 years old. And who's he going to bump? I mean, you're going to put Mike Williams on the bench. You're going to put Lazard on the bench, who's looked pretty darn good. He's not even throwing to Garrett Wilson. And Garrett Wilson says this week that his route tree has changed a lot from last year, where he did extremely well with some pretty terrible quarterbacks. So I don't understand why the Jets would want him. I never understand what the Saints do. I don't know why they would want him either. But, just keep him on the West Coast. Let him be, let him pout out there. But, the Jets keep setting themselves back 5 years. They did it by signing Rodgers. They have no quarterback of the future on that roster, no prospects. And if they win 8 or 9 games, they're not going to get a high draft pick to replace the quarterback. So as soon as Rodgers signed, I always thought it was a disaster. Maybe Rodgers should have showed up for training camp instead of going.
Yeah, I know. That's right. Yeah, I know. Very interesting take there, Bill. I think you're right. And I think as far as Adams is concerned, there's one team that needs Davante Adams right now, and that's the Chiefs. And I don't want to hear, Bill, you can't trade within your division. Get out of here. The Raiders are going nowhere. Right. When you have Gardner Minshew as your quarterback, you've already signed off on this.
You already threw in the towel.
Trade him to the Chiefs, get as high a pick as you can, and get on with it. I don't see any sense in him going anywhere else, but we'll see how that goes. And I have 3 other names for you. Talking with Bill Reinhard here from fantasyguru.com and the contributor for the New York Daily News. 3 names that are really through the first month are seriously underperforming relative to their ADP, Bill. Let's start with Breece Hall, who was a consensus number 2 pick behind McCaffrey. Give me your thoughts. Is he going to be coming on?
So Breece is like a compiler. Last year he had 10 games where he rushed under 50 yards. And so, then he had those big exploding 170-yard games. All right. So he's always catching the ball. He compiles his stats. Last year, between weeks 2 and 4, he had 83 yards rushing. And then week 5 last year, boom, he runs for 177 yards. So I think you kind of got to get used to this is what you can expect from Breece Hall. He'll give you the drips and drabs, and then he's going to explode one week, and then it's going to be like a heartbeat, and you just have to put up with it. But don't give up on Breece Hall because after all said and done last year, he was still the second highest scoring running back.
Fair enough. All right. Bijan Robinson, this drama's been going on now since the Falcons drafted him. It seemingly doesn't matter, Bill, who the head coach is. Invariably, they fall in love with Tyler Algier. What is stopping this guy from getting RB1 usage?
Well, I have a new nickname for him. He's SOB John is what I'm calling him now.
SOB John.
And I got to tell you, his elusive rate is horrendous. He's run into the guys. He's not getting by anybody, and he's not escaping. He's not breaking tackles. Meanwhile, Algier comes in, and he runs for more yards on less carries. I don't know what the deal is. He says he had a hamstring pull last week. He says he's fine, said he's going to be full go tonight. And the only thing I'll say about Bijan tonight is he's the number one in props for the first touchdown being scored, the anytime touchdown being scored, to be the leading yardage rushing tonight. So the powers that be still have Bijan, up there in the upper echelon. But
all right, so you're holding on him. You still think that something's going to happen? Okay, all right. And then the last name is Tyreek Hill. The Dolphins just look dysfunctional right now. There is no assurance as to when Tua's coming back, nor Bill, when he comes back, how long he's going to last. It's just a terrible situation right now for Miami. If you get a chance, are you flipping Tyreek Hill?
I don't want any part of him. I think he should go back to Kansas City. I mean, the Dolphins are going nowhere this year. Mike McMichaels is 1-6 without Tua. So, and that's a heck of a stat. So Tyreek, you can't throw the ball to him. And I mean, he can't throw the ball to himself. Sorry. Right. I don't like anything about him. I'm staying away from every Dolphin. Even the running game's falling apart now.
I said earlier in the show, Bill, that the teams that don't invest in a backup quarterback are really setting themselves up to fail. You can see the Colts saved themselves with getting Joe Flacco, and the Panthers, they rejuvenated that whole team by bringing Andy Dalton in.
The Red Rifle.
Yeah, Miami, Skylar Thompson. Come on now. Now, Tim Boyle. Let's knock it off, the Dolphins. All right, enough about that. Bill Reinhard. Now, for week five, I want you to give me, it doesn't have to be a waiver move. Just give me a sleeper quarterback, a sleeper running back, sleeper wide receiver that you think might make some fantasy headlines this weekend.
Well, in the daily news, I recommended starting Deshaun Watson, but I'll give you someone else. All right, I'll give you someone else because I know you're never gonna have me on again. But Trevor Lawrence, he threw 2 touchdowns in both games last year against the Colts. He's going to do it again. He'll have 2 touchdowns, a couple hundred yards. You get 20 points out of Trevor Lawrence at quarterback. At running back, I'm going back to the Chuba Hubbard well. The Red Rifle has rejuvenated the Panthers. And, I mean, Hubbard, he's had 3 games in a row with double-digit points. He's had a couple of games in a row with over 100 yards. You can run on the Bears. So, and I think it's going to be tough to throw on him. So I do like Chuba Hubbard a lot this weekend. And then for a receiver, I like Cortland Sutton. And he is, I got to tell you, not many people start him. He's
Cortland Sutton.
What's that?
Cortland Sutton. So you're
Cortland Sutton. Yeah. Right. Not many people start him. He's on a lot of rosters, but he doesn't get a lot of playing time.
Right.
He had the only touchdown last week. The guy gets 12, 11, 9 targets a game. Bo Nix will only get better. And I think Sutton has a nice game against the Raiders this weekend.
I appreciate that very much. That's some gutsy moves there. The Deshaun Watson one, I understand Watson because the Commanders give up the most fantasy points to quarterbacks, which is really surprising. But so if he's ever going to have a good game, Bill, it better be this weekend. Yeah. All right. So where does everybody find you, Bill, over the weekend? They want to get some last-minute fantasy. Where are they going to find Bill Reinhard?
I'm in today's daily news with my fantasy billboard column. I'm also on Twitter at NFL Fantasy Bill. You can find snippets of the column there. And I'm also with fantasyguru.com. And that column came out today as well. And it's all about how the fantasy gods hate me. So you can just take a look at the artwork on Twitter. There's a paywall for Fantasy Guru. I get it. But take a look at the artwork on Twitter. It's pretty funny, and you'll get a kick out of it.
All right. Bill, I appreciate it very much, pal. Thanks a lot. We'll check those 3 next week. 3 sleepers. Appreciate that. Let's go, Bills. I know all about it.
Thanks for not picking on my Bills, Pat. Thanks for not picking on them.
All right, Bill. Thanks a lot, pal.
Thank you.
All right, Bill Reinhard joining me there, talking some fantasy. When we come back, this guy's no fantasy. I hope the hell he's a lock Hall of Famer for 2025 because that's what he is, and that's former Eagles great and NFL great Eric Allen. We'll talk to Eric about the state of cornerback playing in the National Football League. That's next on This Week in Pro Football, presented by Park Bank.
Somewhere on the blue planet lies a hidden gem, nestled in the heart of lush greenery. Where the game of golf takes on a new meaning. At Spring Mill Country Club, we offer an unparalleled golfing experience. Our meticulously maintained course is designed to challenge and delight golfers of all levels. But that's not all. Spring Mill is also the perfect venue for your most cherished celebrations. From intimate gatherings to grand weddings, our elegant banquet facilities provide the perfect backdrop for your special day. With exquisite cuisine, personalized service, and breathtaking surroundings, every event at Spring Mill becomes a cherished memory. Let us be a part of your journey, whether it's a round of golf, a celebration, or a once-in-a-lifetime wedding. Spring Mill Country Club, where every moment is extraordinary. Visit us today and create your unforgettable story.
It was late at night. I was browsing KennedyAuto.com when there was a knock at my door.
Hey, baby, what you doing?
Buying a car from John Kennedy Ford.
Online?
I let her in on the secret. KennedyAuto.com makes car buying easy. That got her attention.
Can I go for a ride?
Let me get my coat. KennedyAuto.com. Enjoy your ride.
My name is Fran Salerno. I'm a managing director here at Del Valle Insurance Group. Been in the business for over 36 years, saving people money on their insurance needs. Give us a call. Let us help you custom design an insurance plan that meets both your needs and budget.
All right, welcome back to This Week in Pro Football. Pat Callahan here joining you on JAKIB Sports, and I'm always pleased to welcome this gentleman on. That would be a 14-year NFL veteran with the Philadelphia Eagles, New Orleans Saints, and the then Oakland Raiders before they moved to Vegas. That's Eagles great Eric Allen. Eric, thanks very much for joining me.
Hey, Pat, I'm sorry for the inconvenience. You know, duty calls. The son is getting changed from receiver to cornerback, and he's going to play this Saturday. He's out here in California at the University of Laverne, so I had to drive up and hopefully help him out and so he can make some plays on Saturday.
Well, I mean, Eric, if he needs guidance playing cornerback, I imagine his lineage is going to come in pretty handy here in the next 48 hours. So, I mean, I guess, how does he feel about it, going from receiver to corner?
He's excited. He's a smaller guy, so they're gonna probably put him in the slot, and that's kind of where he was offensively. So I just been talking to him the last day or so about, you know, when you're in the slot, you know, what do you like to take advantage of from a receiver? Where do you line up? Do you line up, you know, a little bit wider when you run an inside route? So those are all the things that have to happen pre-snap for you to kind of get an advantage. And I think it's going to do I think he's going to do really well because of the changeover, and he understands route concepts. And that's one of the difficult things about playing corner is you don't really understand the route concepts and what the offense is trying to do to you and attack you. But he's going to have a really good sense of that when he plays on Saturday.
Well, if he bites on something, go easy on him, Eric. Now, okay. Don't expect him to grab it all week one, but. You can also, Eric Allen doesn't need much introduction, but longtime analyst for ESPN and the Pac-12 networks, and you can also find him now as an analyst for the Raiders on Silver and Black Production. So you have watched, not only played, but you have watched a ton of cornerback play. So let me just hit you with this. The Eagles lose to Tampa last week, Eric, and their corners are 10 yards off the line of scrimmage. And Baker Mayfield's getting the ball out in less than 2 seconds because no one is covering Mike Evans or Chris Godwin for the first 10 yards. What is the theory behind playing that soft in the NFL?
Well, you're trying to manufacture pressure any way you can. Baker's been really hot early in the season, and he's been kind of taking those easy throws early in the game, and he gets that confidence. And then later in the game, man, he's like a gunslinger out there. So I always thought it was best to not give those early completions up early. Make him have to fit those throws into tight windows, and particularly with bigger receivers. When you have bigger receivers, you're able to get up on them a little bit and not totally crowd the line of scrimmage, but just give 1 or 2 yards. So it's like, a fly at a picnic. When you're just kind of trying to flap that guy away, that's kind of where you want to be with bigger receivers, particularly early in the game. So Baker has to feel like, man, that's a tight window right there. I'm really going to have to thread it through, or should I just drop it down to the back who's flaring out of the backfield? What I saw last week against the Eagles is just really early on playing off, trying to disguise maybe cover 3 or cover 1, but you really have to, particularly with the hot quarterback like Baker was, you really have to get up and challenge those receivers. And even if it's a zone type of situation, you can get up to about 3 or 4 yards and then bail. Just give him a mental picture of where you are as a cornerback.
Yeah, because neither Evans nor Godwin are known for their speed. I reckon it's not like they blow past these corners. And don't almost all NFL teams now play the too high safeties. And if you're playing that too high safety look, doesn't that allow you maybe to get your corners closer to the line of scrimmage, because those two guys are sitting back 15, 20 yards from the line of scrimmage?
Well, normally if the too high is translated into cover 2, but just because it's too high, that doesn't necessarily mean they're playing cover 2. A lot of teams start off with the too high look, but they're playing what we call a cover 4 or cover 8, which basically means the outside cornerbacks, if the receiver is wide enough, you basically have him man-to-man on any route that's deeper than 10 yards. So when a quarterback looks at the secondary and he sees those too high safeties, if he's not like a mature, educated quarterback, he can think, oh, it's cover 2, so the seam's going to be open. But in actuality, the team is playing a cover 4, a cover 8, some kind of combination coverage. But when you're in that situation, it's a lot easier for your corners to play press. And then if they do have quarters or deep third, again, you can go back to the bail. So it's really all about that initial picture that you're trying to give the quarterback. I used to love to kind of hang around that 5-yard mark as a quarterback is going through his cadence. So he's looking at me and I'm looking at him, and he's kind of like, okay, what are you doing? I said, I have enough time in the world. You're not under center. You haven't got the ball yet. I have all the time in the world to kind of hang out and just show you this muddle picture. And then as he gets down to his cadence, I'll either, go up and press, or I'll stay there and bail.
Talking with former Eagles great and NFL great Eric Allen, I'm sure you're aware today is the 31-year anniversary of your 94-yard pick 6 against the Jets. Did you remember that?
Well, this morning I got a great text about 6 o'clock West Coast time with the whole Pat Summerall, John Madden call.
Right.
It was it really brought back memories. And it was the first time I saw them talk about the sunset. And as the sun was going down over the Meadowlands, they were talking about, what a great sunset it was. And, Boomer, play action, he dips down and throws the ball. So, yeah, I've watched it today about 8 times.
It was a hell of a return. Then you handed the ball to Randall Cunningham. He got hurt in that game, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the second time we were in that situation where we started out as, one of the favorites in the division, and Randall got hurt. The first time it was Green Bay. We were in Green Bay. I believe it was 91 or 90.
Game. Yep.
Opening game.
Yeah.
Bryce Pop, the defensive end, outside linebacker, kind of came low and just really ruined our season, so to speak, because we ended up that year finishing #1 overall in defense in every category. But offensively, we really struggled without the great ultimate weapon in Randall Cunningham.
I'm going to come back to that then, because I want to ask you in a couple minutes some psychology about that, like locker room type question. But I wanted to circle back, though, to one thing you had mentioned earlier about these big receivers. From your history as one of the great corners in NFL history, who's tougher to cover? Is it a Mike Evans type, an A.J. Brown type, or is it a Tyreek Hill type?
The smaller guys always were a challenge with me. The bigger guys, if you get a good week of preparation and study, like for instance, Terrell Owens, an amazing, strong, athletic, big-time football player, but he's not going to run a lot of in and out quick routes. His routes are going to be downfield, 10, 12-yard out routes, 15-yard inside breaking routes. When he does run slant routes, they're going to have to clear the area out for him. So there's not going to be much receivers on his side, and he's going to line up a little wider. And it just takes some time for those big guys to get going. So sometimes I would play really tight and what we call quick jam them and then bounce back. So they see this hands in their face, and so they're going to react. But I was fast enough to be able to cut them off and stride, things like that. Man, those small, Joey Galloway, was a 4'1" 40 guy. He gave me incredibly difficult situations. One receiver that no one really ever gives a lot of respect to, and there were a couple of them at Washington when we were playing, was Ricky Sanders was another one. They can line him up in a slot. He can kind of basketball you and go in and out. Gary Clark, oh man, he run such great option routes. And with Coach Joe Gibbs, he would do such a great job of giving them opportunities to option off of my strength.
Yeah, then you had a great possession receiver in Art Monk. That was a
Hall of Fame
trio of receivers. Yeah. I remember those battles. You're not kidding. Now, Eric, I want to circle back to what you did say a couple minutes ago, because earlier in this show, I was talking about the fact that certain teams, to me, Eric, enter the NFL season having already thrown in the towel because they haven't invested in the quarterback position. I'm talking about, for instance, and I know you might be a little circumspect here in your opinion, but the Raiders, to go into a season with Gardner Minshew, no way. Deshaun Watson is dragging the Browns down. The New York Giants invested in Daniel Jones. My question to you is, the stars, the really good defensive players, I mean, week to week, how hard is it for the defensive side to say, come on, let's go give 110% on every play, knowing that you don't have the guns to win on offense?
Yeah, really, really difficult. And you try and make sense of it by saying, okay, who is surrounding the quarterback? All right, do we have enough personnel, receiver-wise, offensive line-wise, running game-wise, to shield the quarterback until he gets into a situation to where he's at his strength? For instance, we know Gardner is a creative, outside the pocket, play breaks down, he can make some plays happen. But we have to put our team in a situation with our defense to be able to still be close in the game. And, defensively, just a lot of pressure on you, just like that 91 season, to play at your level best each and every week. Right. And not only that, but turnovers. You got to get turnovers to give your offense opportunities with the short field. So you're taking a possession away from the opposing offense and then hopefully giving your team an opportunity to have a short field and score. Or, in my case, I'm thinking about taking it to the house. I'm thinking about not only am I catching it, but I'm taking it to the house to try and help our offense. But yes, it is really stressful on a guy like Max Crosby, who is one of the best defensive players in the league, to play at his level best every single week in order to give our team, who doesn't have the franchise type quarterback at this moment, to be able to win each and every week.
Right. And it's got to be debilitating too, I guess, Eric, a veteran player, say, for instance, on the Raiders, who's now, could watch Davante Adams get traded, because you just know then that the Raiders are no longer investing in the current year. They're investing in a future year, and it's got to be tough to overcome that psychologically too, right?
Hey, Pat, man, that's a great insight right there. And if, obviously, if you play this game long enough, you're going to hopefully put yourselves in all kind of situations. I was in this situation at the end of my run in Philadelphia, where I just didn't think the team was at a point where they were going to challenge for, a Super Bowl.
Right.
So I go to New Orleans, and it was the same situation there pretty much. It was kind of a rebuilding.
Right.
And you, at the end of your career, you want to be in meaningful football games in November and December. That's what Buddy used to always talk about. Right. Hey, you know what? We can play consistent, but when November and December hits, you got to be playing some good football, and your team needs to be one of those teams that people are believing that is a playoff Super Bowl caliber team. And so for Davante, I understand where he is right now. I don't think it's about not liking the Raiders. He bought a house in Las Vegas. He's going to live in Las Vegas. Right. Him and Antonio have a really good relationship. Right. He was a Raider fan growing up when he was young.
Right.
But your last 3 or 4 years, you wouldn't be in those games where, you get the touchdown or the interception to seal the victory. And, you're hoisting up a divisional championship and a conference championship. And I understand why Davante is extremely great player, Hall of Famer, but he definitely needs to be in situations where he can help team get to the championship.
All right. Eric, Allen, the last question I have for you is of a similar ilk, and it deals with a situation here in Philadelphia, and one that just is my opinion, which is I'm not sure there's much conversation going on between head coach Nick Sirianni and defensive coordinator Vic Fangio. I think Fangio is an old school guy. I think he's set in his ways, and I'm not sure that that's going to work. Now, my question to you is, as a veteran player, you've been in hundreds of locker rooms.
Yeah.
Do players sense that if a rift is forming between a coach and a coordinator?
Without a doubt. They're the first folks to understand and know that the relationship is not great. And it has to be great, particularly when you're the Eagles and you're a perennial playoff team. You brought in a incredible, legendary defensive coordinator to get a defense back to where it was 2 years ago. And if things are not working correctly and the talent on the field is feeling like, being pulled in different ways, either system wise, either what their responsibility is, it does create situations in the locker room that are very uncomfortable. If you have a player who's trying to continue to play at a very high level and he's asked to, hey, you know what, on these certain situations, you need to play off in order for the defense to maximize what we're calling, but that's not his strength. And you don't feel comfortable enough going to him and say, hey, I understand where you are, but for me to get going, hey, maybe I need to challenge this receiver, or I don't want to follow the guy from left to right. I'm greater on the left side. Right. So all those little things start to pop up when the relationship is not great. Right. But I'll say this. Every year as a player, you're evaluated. And that evaluation going into the offseason is to make you a better player. You have to develop. If your coaching staff is not developing players and you're just getting what you got, that's not good for the player either. That's right. And you're not going to be able to turn around and bounce back after a tough playoff loss because you're not going to develop better. And it's up to the players and, more importantly, the coaching staff to develop its players year in and year out so they can get better at their craft. And I just don't see that right now on the defensive side of the ball with the Philadelphia Eagles.
All right. I really appreciate the effort you made to come on the show tonight. And I want you to know you cleared the first hurdle. I'm sure there's going to be some intense lobbying here to finally get you the gold jacket that you deserve. look forward to that. And I look forward to having you back on later this year. And I'm looking forward to a Noah Pick 6 this weekend. All right. But thanks very much for taking the time to join us.
Anytime. Take care, my man. Thank you for everything.
All right. Eric Allen joining us here. Thanks very much, Eric. And all right, that'll do it for an edition of This Week in Pro Football. Like I said, good schedule for week 5. Be some good games. Sunday night game, Dallas, Pittsburgh. Monday night, the Saints are in Kansas City. I think the Chiefs should handle that because I don't believe in Derek Carr at all. But we'll see. The Chiefs, and check out Sal Pao this weekend on the Matchup Show on ESPN for more on the Chiefs. All right, thanks very much to Xander Krause for producing. Thank to all of you for watching tonight. And look forward to bringing some more football talk to you on a Week 6 edition next week of This Week in Pro Football. Good night.